Okay. Call the meeting to order. Please stand, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you very much. Tonight we are going to have a little juggling of the agenda just to accommodate different schedules. We had one board member who unexpectedly could not be here tonight. That was Lynn Robson, and Rob Brown needs to leave early. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with Tracy's award.
Tracy's award. Yeah.
All right. Communicator of the Year. So I'll turn over to Nick.
Yes, so it is with great honor and pleasure we get to announce that Tracy was awarded. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Want to make
great
sure.
communication.
Yes. So I obviously was not nominated for this. My inability to turn a microphone on. Very, very happy to announce this, that Tracy was both nominated and then received the Mary Pat File Communicator of the Year Award for the Wisconsin School Public Relations Association. So this was a great honor. Had the opportunity to go down and watch Tracy get the award in, let's see, it was about 2 weeks ago. And she didn't know she was getting the award, which was even better. And then she didn't know that her family and myself were going to be down there for the awards. And so when she saw us standing in the back after she was on stage, that was kind of priceless as well. It was a fun experience, but definitely a well-deserved award, and very, very happy, very proud of her and her work she does for the school district. So,
All right. Any board member want to comment on that, or Megan is quick to the mic?
Well, Tracy, I just want to say I'm not surprised. You're just fantastic. You do so much for our district. You do a great job, and you're wonderful to work with. And I'm so glad to see you recognized for all your work.
Thank you.
And Bob?
And I know she would like if I didn't say anything, so I'm just going to say great job and nothing more.
Thanks.
Yes, I would say, with having worked with you for nearly 12 years, definitely a deserved award, and I'm glad that you were recognized. Thank you for your work. All right, so now next up, we're going to juggle down to the property update. Construction update.
construction update.
Get my terminology straight here. Construction update, which would come from Market and Johnson. We have a representative here. Please introduce yourself, and I guess what we're looking for is, are we on time, are we on budget, and have we hit any major hiccups?
Brad Chemist, Market and Johnson. We have the slides. So we've recently, since last month, we've got started at the middle school, so we're now actively working in all three schools. Happy to say that all three schools are on budget, or on time.
Maybe if you go over to the standing mic over here. That way you can see the screen at the same time.
Now I can't quite read them, so this is This is the middle school, so we're started the first two houses in the middle school. Demo is very close to being completed and ready to start the rebuild. So everything's going very well on schedule at the middle school. If anybody's had a chance to stop out there, you can really see that's, obviously already started to change already.
Yeah, I think it was three of us board members, Kate, Bob, and I were over and walked outside a little bit, and then inside saw the first classrooms that had been gutted. So are those coming along?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, actually, if anything, they're a little bit ahead of schedule, so a little too early to capitalize on that yet. But yes, definitely going well.
Good.
At EP Rock, we're kind of in the middle of that first phase right now, with those classrooms. So the demo is getting pretty close to being completed. We're probably about a week away from really starting to hit the rebuild heavy. So again, that's another one that's roughly right on schedule. I'm looking to turn that back over, that first phase over at the end of, in January. So, that one's a little bit more complicated. It's obviously an older school, some more unexpected items that we're encountering, but we're actively working through those. It's actually a pretty interesting school, so if you had a chance to want to see something a little different and a little vintage of building, I can stop out there and take a look at that one. But you can see that wall, that's where the new windows are going to go in the exterior wall, which at some point in time, the original windows were blocked in with framing and ephes.
So is this the area where the old locker rooms were?
No, if you go down a little bit, one more,
Okay.
that's bathrooms. If you go down one more, maybe. This is going into kind of the old locker room space. One more. That's the old locker rooms.
Okay.
So that's asbestos abatement going on through there. So after they got all the walls down, all of the inside all the walls were all the plumbing. They were all insulated with asbestos insulation, things like that. So there's the containment center as they are doing the abatement through the middle of the old locker room space.
Yeah,
Do you
one,
want to speak to the asbestos abatement and how we're not having kids there?
Yep, we're not having kids in that areas, and we're doing them after hours and doing some of the outside stuff out, because there's some outside asbestos abatement. But I think they're done now in this first.
yeah,
first section.
asbestos is all completed, and as they were going along, they were doing air monitoring. So we actually had a technician out there air monitoring, and before anybody was allowed back in, it was all completely cleared.
Thank you.
So do we have any site maps of any of the three buildings that you're doing work in? Just because the public that's looking at this, they don't have any idea where these rooms are, what have you. And I didn't have a chance to go through the packet, but,
Yeah, there isn't anything included with the packet.
Well,
okay.
I think what we can do in future updates, we can kind of do a one-page site map that says this is the part of the building that's working on. We'll highlight it. I think that's a good idea. We'll put that in the notes to make sure we have, what these pictures are in reference to.
Okay.
I think that'd be a good idea.
And so how are with each of the schools, a common question I get from parents is, we're going to be doing this work. How do we make sure that we don't get into the way of our kids being educated?
Well, we're completely isolated and blocked off from the rest of the school, so there is no commingling with the construction staff with our staff unless they're going out to do some exploration between classes. So really, there really is no disruption. No disruption in the mechanical systems. We're not making a bunch of noise, so it was, for all practical purposes, and what we really focus on is making sure that we're invisible as possible to the staff and students.
So any work that would happen inside would happen during the summer?
Summer or off hours.
Okay.
What,
Very good.
what, you mean inside the buildings in general?
Where
Oh,
students
no,
are.
like, so if you go to page 5, Tim, if you go up, so you can see, like, at the middle school, there's work going on during the school day, but it's all behind that
Yeah,
wall.
right there.
Everything's walled off, sealed off, taped off, so that it's, the kids can still get by in the hallways and things like that, but those houses are sealed off. It's the same type of look at North Hudson in a section of the building, same type of look at EP Rock. So, walled off and their own separate area, and then when they get done, then it'll turn over, they'll move to a different area.
Perfect.
Yep.
Any surprises or concerns with rock?
Surprises, yes, but concerns, no. So we know, yes and no on the surprises. It's an old building that's been remodeled several times, of course, the last 40 years, so they definitely expect some unknowns in there, but nothing alarming.
Okay, thank you.
And if you look at page 9, Tim, if you go to page 9, EP Rock, you'll see where they took off the, keep going now. One more. There you go. They took off the old chalkboards and stuff like that. So typically you would mount, like you see that whiteboard is mounted at the face of the wall. They go to take these off and they were actually mounted inside the plaster. And so, basically, that's gonna be a change order for us because they're gonna have to build that out and smooth that wall out because you can't just take them down and leave it that way. Just little things like that, I think, that have come up.
Yeah, I would say the most interesting thing we found was that there's it's not quite in this phase yet, it'll be in later phases, but there was at one point in time, there was an addition built onto the building and they built over the top of the old roof. So we have a roof complete with rubber membrane on it, then another roof on top of it.
And when you remove, I think, what is it, the ceiling tile, they went to remove the ceiling tile in the hallway, and about 4 inches above the ceiling tile was a metal softening from the overhang from the outside of the old building. So they just, not even like they took it off and built new, they just built around it,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, demo in place, right?
yes, a lot of demo in place.
So that'll, the lower roof, so to speak, has to come out of there so we can run the new ductwork in eventually.
If you keep going down into North Hudson.
I have to ask then, did we pick up some needed ceiling height in that area then too? Was that a plus at the end of this?
Well, we picked up the needed ceiling height that we had planned for, so nothing extra, unfortunately.
And no bags of money buried in the wall either. You know, we're kind of hoping.
And over at North Hudson, continuing on with the addition, the structural steel roof and the joist and roof decking is largely completed at this point. Gearing up to start the brick veneer here shortly, and continuing on with that interior demo, which is scheduled to wrap up right around the holidays. With the staff moving into that second phase in how it's laid out in our world. So you can kind of see that all the masonry walls, the bearing walls are up, windows are blocked in, and that the very bottom where the plastic is there, that's being heated so they can put the base of wall masonry on to start the insulation. That's the next step. Same thing at the media center. They're just putting in that second level to put the mechanical room up, which was just about to get wrapped up now. Then inside that first classroom section is the finishes are being installed, flooring's going in, and getting ready to put the finishing touches on that to turn that over end of the year. And a lovely mechanical space is all prepped and got the old heat exchanger out, so we've got that space cleared up.
Mr. President?
Yes, Megan.
And then the timeline is for everything to be completed by the end of this summer, right? Is that
Yes.
correct still?
Yes, August. So turn it over for school year next year.
Awesome.
So trying to get as much done as we can during the school year, work with the staff in the district, and be ready to hit the ground running in the summer.
Other questions or anything else? I think for the most part, things seem to be going pretty well. You know, we've had some change orders here and there, but nothing too terribly major. And you know, we're getting to the point now where they're starting to really know the inside of the buildings as we work through it. You know, our biggest thing, we're trying to figure out the mechanical system related to the swimming pool area. It takes, as we talked about last time, it takes a lot of coordination because it's got to shut that area down for about 8 weeks. And we have a lot of users that use that all year round, so we're making sure that's all coordinated and ready to go.
Nick, this was the beam, so
Oh,
we
yeah.
brought that beam into the elementary school and had all the elementary kids came in and signed it. Oh, cool. So it's kind of neat. You can't really see it here, but if you look at the picture on your thing, they won't be able to see it, but it is in there with their signatures on it, which is kind of fun.
That's a great touch.
Yeah,
Great activity. They were pretty excited.
You can see all their signatures on that beam, and
No, it's pretty
now
awesome.
it'll be covered with fireproofing material and things like that, but their signature will be there forever.
It was there.
Yeah. So with the referendum we had, you know, part of our website, you know, Nick, a spot where people could go and gather information. And shame on me, I haven't been to our website looking, but is there that same link or something where taxpayers or people who are interested could go to and see these updates or something, or do they have to go to our agendas?
No, it's on the front page of the website. So there's a.
So they can get an
link,
update on,
Right, from the very first page.
that's fantastic. So, last question for you. There was a star put on North Hudson. Why? Yeah, in North Hudson. I don't know if that was at Rock as well.
No, that was just at North Hudson. We had, thought we had permission to put that star up, and we didn't, and took the star down as soon as we realized that.
Yeah, thanks for taking it down.
Okay,
So,
any other
yeah.
questions or concerns? All right. Thanks for the report, and I guess I misspoke earlier when I said that we did, you were talking about middle school first, and I was used to seeing these reports because North Hudson started first, and middle school is going to be the last to have the most substantial work done. So it was North Hudson that we toured, not the middle school. But when will we get an opportunity to have the board have another tour, do you think? Late January?
No,
Or
we
for
could,
early Feb?
we could do early January. I mean, there'll be parts that'll be done and turned over by early January, especially in North Hudson. So
Okay.
you can see some of the parts that are done and see the next phases on some of the stuff. So, yes, I will, make a note to schedule some of those tours.
Yeah,
All right.
that'd be good timing. You'd be able to see the finished first phase at North and then a partially, almost completed at EP.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so that takes care of one of our reports. And Nick, do you agree we'll go on to the post-referendum
Sure.
direction? This isn't going to be an action item, but it's kind of a continuation of the discussion that we started at the last work session. And wanted to make sure that we had that while Member Brown was still here, so.
Yep. So, you know, again, just to kind of give you an update of where we are. So 2 weeks ago, the board had discussions about where do we go from here post-referendum. And that, a lot of that discussion focused on, you know, do we start making cuts first? Do we start looking at potentially going to referendum again in April, not going to referendum in April? If we do, what does that look like? One of the things that we had said to the board is that, you know, between that meeting and now, what we did is we met with our teacher advisory committee this afternoon for about 3 hours. I think Molly was there and Bob was there as representatives of the board. And really what we did is we presented them with about 20 areas that are categories, kind of potential cut categories. Not that we are recommending those cuts, not that the board is recommending those cuts, but really, you know, based on the feedback we got from the board 2 weeks ago, it was to have our staff be able to give us, be able to give the feedback as to what type of impact would that have on either them, our kids, or our community, and how things operate. And so we spent 3 hours this afternoon going through that. And so we were compiling, we're in the process of compiling all that feedback. They broke into groups of 4. We had 9 groups of 4 going. We're going to take all of that feedback by category. We're going to come up with common themes for each of those categories is what they think the impact is, put it into one document. We'll also give you access to all of the raw data as well. So you have that, and we would anticipate that being ready for Monday night's board work session that's coming up. Along with what we think are some of the dollar amounts associated with those potential cuts. For today's exercise with staff, we didn't have the dollar amounts included in the cuts because we wanted them to focus really on the impact, not on the dollar impact, but really what is on the impact of those different things. And we're not totally done with fleshing out all of the different dollar amounts related to reductions and things along those lines. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So going into next week, we'll be ready for the board work session to be able to present kind of a whole myriad of options for the board to look at, along with to continue the conversation related to when and you know, for how much and where do you want to go with it. I think the big conversation that was had today to start off is we wanted to lay the groundwork so that everybody was working from the same piece of information, which is basically what is the current, you know, financial condition and what is our projected financial condition. All numbers that we've shared at the board meeting multiple times, multiple public presentations and things like that, and where our deficits are sitting going into next year if either the board chooses not to go to referendum, or if they do choose to go to referendum and it doesn't pass, what we would be sitting with. So that was kind of a little bit of a recap of today. I don't know if Molly, Bob, if you want to add anything or.
I would just applaud the effort of the staff that was involved today. A lot of good discussion, and I think Molly mentioned, and I noticed as well, that they were already bringing information from other staff at the schools as well. So we want involvement. We want a lot of people talking about it, and I think this is a good start.
I agree, Bob. Everything you said.
I am always impressed that we have such dedicated teachers who care about our district and are looking, I mean, I felt like the conversations that I overheard, they were thinking really holistically about the district and the impacts. And they're the people who are the boots on the ground, who understand it better than we do. So I think they were really grateful that they could have input, and it is super valuable input. So whoever suggested it, it was great. And I know there's hard stuff coming, but it's good that we're all kind of working together as a team. So I appreciate that.
So Nick, if you could take those, not enumerate all 20 of those areas of cuts, but I know we had broader categories when we were speaking at the last work session, and there was a few, like, the board wasn't inclined to go there in some areas. So why don't you just, like, can you state the broad areas that we're
Yeah, I mean,
talking about?
you know, I can kind of I mean, you originally kind of had 5 areas from our post mortem survey that we did in '23, which talked about closing schools, delaying technology, transportation changes, curriculum delays, and class sizes. And so what we tried to do is, as an admin team, we tried to put together what are the kind of different categories we could look at. And, you know, and there were some areas the board said we're absolutely not interested in eliminating fine arts or eliminating athletics or things like that. But, you know, we did ask for feedback on increasing class sizes at all levels, what their thoughts were, reducing electives at the secondary, and I reminded them that reducing course options at the secondary only saves money when you reduce graduation requirements, because if you just reduce the course options and kids still need to take the same number of credits, they're just gonna take different courses, and you need more staffing in those courses then. We talked about reducing specials at the elementary, which is art, music, media, guidance lessons, PE, things like that. What would be the impact of that? Reducing student service supports, which would be gifted and talented education counselors, school psychologists, nursing, things along those lines. Reducing student intervention services at the secondary level, reducing district administrative support, you know, so whether it be assistant directors or managers or supervisors that are more district-wide positions. We talked about reducing office support, and that would be more at the building level, where it would be, you know, clerical staff, administrative assistants, health assistants, things along those lines. Reducing building administrative support, that includes, you know, deans, assistant principals, things along those lines. We talked about implementation of unpaid furlough days and what that would look like at administration, certified and support staff, reduction of instructional coaching, library, media, and related teaching and learning services. We talked about even reduce our cleaning schedule, going to every other day, and what that looks like, and getting feedback on that. Delaying curriculum adoption, although this is one that came up here, the way curriculum works now, and Dave's not here to say it, but because everything's so technology-based now, you're basically paying a subscription. So it's not like it used to be where you could buy a textbook and just hold on to the textbook an extra year, and you didn't have to buy a textbook that year. If we don't pay for those subscriptions, we don't have access to the information. So it's a lot different now. Delaying technology purchases, that was part of the 5 groups. Reduction in district and building non-staffing budgets, so that would be everything related to travel and field trips and supplies, things that aren't staffing related, more discretionary. We talked about reducing capital maintenance budgets. Those are ongoing maintenance budgets, things along those lines. We talked about the reduction of employee benefits, you know, health insurance, things along those lines. Reduction in salary increases, or what we do with salaries. Increased participation fees. So we didn't talk about eliminating athletics or arts, but we talked about what if we had to increase the fees to make them more budget neutral, and what that would look like. And then we also talked about closing elementary schools. And there's essentially 4 scenarios related to closing elementary schools. There's closing Willow and keeping 5 elementaries open. There's closing Holton and keeping 5 elementaries open. Or there's closing Willow and Holton and keeping 4 elementaries that would be K-5 elementaries. Or there's closing Willow and Holton and having 2 K-2 elementaries and 2 3-5 elementaries. And so we asked for feedback on those 4 different scenarios related to closing elementaries, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that right now percentage-wise, we're running about 66% capacity in our elementary buildings, and so there's some savings there, and we should have some of those numbers ready for the board next week as well, to be able to provide what that looks like. So really, staff gave us what they felt is the impact on each of those things. And not necessarily everything's negative, not saying everything's positive or anything like that, but they definitely have loaded it into our sheets, and we're going to be working on that over the next couple of days to compile that for you for Monday.
Okay. Now, when we spoke, I think Lynn was missing from our work session last time, and I wasn't able to talk with her. I tried to talk with board members when they can't be here for a meeting and see what input they might have. And she was unexpectedly, had to go due to a health reason for a client of hers. So that, but she set aside time to talk to me today and then sent me an email that just kind of reiterated where she's kind of coming from. First, she thought that we need to do a good job of communicating more about the taxpayer impact per household. Obviously, the numbers might change given that we're talking about a different timing for a different budget year. So that will be one thing that we could improve upon. And she would be leaning towards doing a non-reoccurring, maybe something that was 5 to 6 years, so that we would then have some time to look and see how things play out budget-wise, and then go back to the community if we needed something that was recurring on a more long-term basis. But she really strongly supported a community forum in January, that before this board takes another vote on going to referendum, we need to have some type of community forum. Similar to the input that the staff had today at TAC, we need to do something with the community and get their insights. And so really, calendar-wise, we're very limited because of the extra long Christmas break we have, which really starts, Thursday, a week from Thursday. So then when we get back from winter break, we really just have that first week of January, because January, the meeting is January 12th?
13th.
13th. January 13th is our action meeting, by which time we would have to make the decision of whether we're going to referendum.
By the 20th. So
We could call a special meeting.
you could call a special meeting on the 20th.
Yep. I don't want to set that up already as being the case, but it's a possibility. I just think we're looking at really a Tuesday or a Thursday rate. We try to avoid Wednesday nights to have community forums. So it'd be that first Tuesday in January, or that Thursday, the 8th?
Or you could, that's Wednesday's the 8th, but.
Or the 9th. I'm thinking 7th and 9th. then.
You could do Tuesday the 7th, or you could do, Monday the 6th. If you want to, you could push the board meeting back and do the community do the community meeting Monday the 13th, before the board meeting.
I'm open to anything. What do our other board members feel?
Mr. President?
Yes.
I think Monday before the board meeting would make it very difficult for a lot of parents to get there. Anyone who's working, it could be hard because you'd have to
No, I
take
mean,
off
like, you
work.
could do it at 6 and have the board meeting at like 8:30.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so
So
you
that
could
would
have it-
make more sense then. I was like, oh, how are we going to do it at 4? But I think a community forum's a great idea. Especially if we're going to be talking next week about where cuts might need to happen, what the impact would be. I think the difficult situation we find ourselves in, which I know was talked about at TAC today, is there's probably going to have to be a combination of cuts and a referendum, or otherwise a lot of cuts, because we're looking at an $8 million deficit by 28, 29, is it,
Yeah,
Nick?
close to.
That's almost 10% of our budget, and that's not like, well, if we print less, we talked about that 2 weeks ago. There's no way to cut around the edges to get rid of $8 million. Like, there are impacts that are going to be felt substantially. So I think a community forum is a good idea.
Mr. President?
Yes, Rob.
So I agree with Megan. I think a community forum is a fine idea. The challenges we all know is actually getting people to attend. We could find a date, broadcast it, and still wind up with a dozen people that already have their minds made up. And so if we're gonna have a date, and Nick shared with us at our last meeting, as I recall, that list of folks from that community engagement that we did. Is there an opportunity, once we have a date, to reach out to those folks and tell them they're again needed? I mean, again, we'll get a group of people that I think are already supportive of the school district, but at least we'll have more input on whatever the agenda looks like, for that date, because I'd hate to have a date and only a dozen people show up.
Well, I agree with that, Rob. We need to do a good job of being actively inviting people. But just the fact that we're talking about it right here and telling folks that closing Holton and closing Willow will be the discussion topics, among the discussion topics, I think will make it so that we don't have any problem having people attend it. The question is which venue, because we're talking either middle school again in a similar format where we give a presentation on the board and have people at tables, or we could do it at the high school auditorium, right? And have a presentation given so that people understand the financial impact, and then just have microphones placed out in the crowd and allow people to have, it's more of like a public hearing than it is some type of workshop where they sit at a table and rank choices of cuts and stuff like that. But I see that as the two options, unless somebody sees a third option of where we could have it and how it would be presented.
So just, I guess to build on that, because we have experience with talking about Willow and Holton, the meeting will become solely about Willow and Holton, potentially. And so as we're being creative and proactive, how do we go about setting up the meeting so that when people come to speak, it's not solely about save my school? And again, I don't have an answer, but that's just something that I think we'll likely face. Go ahead.
Thank you. I kind of agree with you, Rob. I feel like we have some people who were very energetic supporters of their school, as they should be. And if we don't plan it as we want to make sure that it's a good event, that we get information and feedback that's useful. And, whether we kind of tap into some of those stakeholders again, which are such a wide variety of people, and then maybe we reach out to the PTOs from each school. Something like that. Those are actually people, not just one school, and ask each school to bring people, or I don't know if I'm expressing that properly. The one thing I'm concerned about too is if we meet at 6 o'clock, and then we're going to have another meeting after where we make a decision potentially, is that enough time to digest
Right.
what's going on?
Well, that's why I would lean towards doing something on January 9th.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that would be maybe a better course of action.
You can't do that.
I mean, you guys can do it without me, but I
No.
absolutely cannot do the 9th.
What about the 7th?
I can do the 7th, Tuesday the 7th.
Tuesday the 7th? That gives us more time in between. I think and while it's great to get people who are supportive of our schools, I also think that we need to do something to reach out and let those people know who maybe weren't supportive of our last 2 operating referendums to come and speak. Now, what I use as a data point or as an example was the secondary space solutions. We did something at the middle school where we actually had a bigger turnout than what we did in November of '22 when the rumor got started that we were closing schools, all right? That was, what would you say, Nick? That was somewhere in the PST process. Tracy, you remember when we had that? It was it was more of a workshop setting. We had tables of 8 to 10 people and talking about different options. But we had the people who wanted brand-new high school, whether 3-year or 4-year, and they got to stay in the main room. And then the people who wanted to do remodel got shifted over to the cafeteria. And then we ended up doing the remodel. So it was the, kind of the least attended, but it was the proponents and the people who wanted to see the least tax impact. So I just hope that we get some folks that do want to see, solutions that don't necessarily involve raising taxes. So I want to see a rounded approach, but this is why we're talking about it now, is to get a date out there so that people can circle that in red, say, I want to attend. Now, what the exact things and how the process of the meeting is going to go, I think we can work on that next week at our work session. But these are great points you're bringing out, Rob, and Molly. I would agree that we need to have something that's balanced so that the total focus isn't just on closing schools.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Yeah, I really like the sort of workshopping idea, and I think the 7th, if we have a similar type of survey that maybe people work in groups and they talk, and then they can fill out the survey on their phone, or we have paper forms, and then maybe people who cannot attend the meeting could also fill out the survey. And thank you for bringing up the point that it could turn into a don't close our school. I mean, I know before I was on the school board that I was one of those people. I think I have 2 kids at Willow right now. One's in 4K there, and I'll have a kid at Holton next year. So I'll have a kid at Willow, a kid at Holton. And I have, the things I was like, this isn't going to happen. We're going to see our enrollment go up. Like things, it hasn't happened, right? So I was wrong. I was hopeful, but I was wrong. And I think it's important that we have a wide-ranging discussion, but I think, I don't know, I lost my train of thought. But it's a real possibility. We have to look at the equitable education for our K through 5 students across all of our schools. So.
Mr. President?
Bob and then Rob.
I would rather, if it's gonna be at the high school, have it in the open area. I think the auditorium is. I'm sorry. I just said that if we were gonna have this, we should have it in the open area in the high school or the middle school, not in the auditorium, much less formal. I think one of the things that turned out really good with the discussion we had in the middle school was we actually talked and answered questions and addressed their concerns. It was, I think it was how people would want to see us put this together again.
Okay. Rob?
So your point about the comparison of the PST and the success that we have with the middle school.
Or just discussing options again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the PST was the culmination of months, which you were part of, Jill, Birchall, Joel, who am I missing? I think Bruce
Paul
was part of
Bourget,
that. Paul
Tom
Bourget.
Van Pelt, yep.
Yep. And so that was months of that conversation that ultimately led to the climax of that work that was done at the middle school. And the concern that I would have is that without having all of that front work done and simply having the meeting, I think, I could be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, is that the result would be not as the great result of the PST, but more in the former as far as what we're talking about, specifically Willow and Holton Save Our School. That would be my concern. I hope I'm wrong. But without all that front work leading to that point, bringing everybody along in that conversation, it becomes more of a, forgive me, but more of a knee-jerk conversation. Well-intentioned for sure, but people will come emotional with one thing in mind, which is, and I could be wrong, but that's my concern.
Okay.
Mr. President, I think it's important that we kind of maybe take a breath too, and that it feels a little bit like we're rushing so that we can get to a question on the ballot. And I think we need to be careful to know that if we're meeting with the community, we're not meeting with a mindset of, we're gonna go to referendum. We're meeting with them to see maybe what options or ideas that they would have for making our budget balanced. 'Cause
Yep.
I know a lot of people have come to me and said, like, you asked once, you asked twice, and now you're just gonna ask again. And I hear what they're saying, so I really think it's important that we do listen to and have people there that did vote no, so we can see what their thoughts are.
Right. Well, and that's, I think, again, it's, as to the process on the Stewart team, yeah, I mean, there was a lot done in those meetings prior to having that middle school workshop. But a lot of that too was like finding and hiring and getting a demographer's report. That took months. We're now talking about, did we look into that, what the applied?
I did. I just talked, finally got a hold of them today. They called back, and so our original demographer is no longer with Applied Population. She actually retired, Sarah Kemp. And so I did talk with their head of Applied Population Unit. They said you're talking probably, at best case scenario, probably about 10 weeks to put the information together, to update our current, our most current stuff. And he was going to finish putting a proposal together and letting me know exactly the cost. But, yep, just finally was able to connect with him this morning on that. And again, I think, if you're using the demographic information, I think there are a couple things people have to be aware of. I don't see any possibility under the sun, even if you wanted to close schools, you're not closing them in the next 12 months. It's just not happening. It is a much bigger process than that, whether people want to do it or not. So that, if that is a direction that the board decides they want to go, then that's a whole nother process that we need to go down. And getting more input from community members and things along those lines. And that's rebounding, it's a lot of components. I would say the very, very earliest we could do anything like that would be fall of '26. And a lot of that, there are a lot of pieces that have to fall into place there. And so I just want to make sure everybody understands that when you start talking about closing Will or closing Holton, it's not like the ability to close those buildings for next fall, even if people wanted to. And I'm not saying anybody does. I'm just saying if they did, that's not realistic. It's not a realistic thing.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I think you made a really good point at our last meeting, Jamie, that we don't want to not explain to the community what the cuts could be, and not give them a chance to go back to referendum or talk about it, because it wasn't clear what could happen with this. It was sort of, foggy still. Well, there could be impacts. And I think the exercise that the district is working on right now to look at what the cuts could be and how that could impact the budget, and we'll talk about that next week, and then bringing those examples to the community, like how would you balance this? What would you cut? I think it makes it a concrete exercise where you're imagining the real impacts for your kid or for our community, is going to make the conversation very different from the conversations we've been having leading up to the last two referendums. So,
Yeah, and I agree with Megan. I think it's, when we start seeing these numbers, the numbers haven't changed over the last 2-3 years, basically, as far as the, what our deficit could be. So that's there. I'm less concerned about like the appearance of a rush. Well, you've already asked, 2 times, like Kate mentioned. True, but we've been aware of these numbers, and we've maybe done the poor job of helping our community understand them. But these are real numbers, and like Nick said, even if we close schools, that doesn't happen immediately. We're looking at 2.6 million next year.
Yes.
Right? 2.6 million next year in the red. Yeah, we can survive that, but we're going to be 500,000 potentially in the red this year. So those numbers were not wrong years ago when we were talking about them. They're not wrong now. So, as far as like Lynn had brought up as maybe, a non-recurring referendum, I thought about that. I didn't think I would support that originally because it's not how you would balance your checkbook at home. You would not do that. But I mean, because even if we passed a recurring referendum, doesn't mean that we would necessarily use it all. And if we passed a non-recurring referendum, we would probably tend to, if it's going to be 5-6 years, we would use it all because that is our chance to get those funds. So you might actually pass a non-recurring referendum and use more money than the recurring referendum.
Right.
And
And I think that that kind of thing needs to be discussed with community members as opposed to just the 7 of us around a table. So I want to be clear, I'm not saying that we have to go to referendum in April of '25. It's just that if we want to do it in '25, it has to be in April, because there is no November of '25 referendum opportunity. So what you're saying is, if we're not ready, and maybe that's what comes out of the discussion with the community, is that we're not ready for a referendum in April '25, then we are making the decision that we're going to be operating in the red for 2 straight years and drawing down our reserve and waiting until April of '26 before we go to the community. Now, that doesn't mean that other things can't happen in the meantime, but I do think people need to see what possible cuts are out there. We just haven't done that. Even as a board, we haven't looked at those kind of numbers. But I get a sense from the experiences that we've had that you can do a lot of cutting around the edge, but some of these decisions have bigger repercussions and bigger chunks can be taken out, rather than saying we're going to go to 30 class size of 30 in kindergarten or something. So anyway, we're kind of sounding like we are in favor of a January 7th forum, and do it at the high school and do it in the.
Well, I just,
Yeah.
okay, so a couple things. I don't think doing it in the auditorium is gonna be real conducive. I think you're
Right.
gonna wanna do it where people can be at tables.
Yeah, the atrium, right?
The
Is that
atri-
what-
well, the commons area, but
Commons area.
also, when I was kind of looking at the facility schedule, there's a lot of stuff that goes on at the high school at any given time. And, there's a lot of stuff going on at the high school, although, I don't believe there's a home game, because that would be problematic too, if you have a home event going on. There's a lot of stuff going on. I mean, the middle school is, for the most part, open on the 7th. I mean, we have some we'd be bumping, it looks like some dance practices, I think, to potentially a different space than if we did, if we did a similar location out in the middle school commons, brought tables in. I do think, what I guess my question would be for this forum, for the board, is what do you want? I mean, if you want me up there for 3 hours again answering questions, I'm more than happy to do that, but I don't know if that's going to give you the feedback you want. We started off wanting to do a much more prescribed response. We had it set up because we wanted feedback by tables, because it's similar to like what we did today. If we can break people into smaller groups and get their responses, we're able to pull themes together much easier than if people are just talking at a microphone. We can do any way you want to do it. We want to be very clear as to what it's going to look like and what the format is, and how you want to do those things.
Mr. President?
Yes.
Nick, I think that's a good point. I'd imagine it would start with some type of presentation, right? This is the budget issue, this is what we're facing. Here's the areas that could be cut, these are the savings. There could be a mix of cuts and going to referendum, like just talking about the options we're talking about right now, and then having people work at a table. I think, I'd be happy to be up there so you're not all alone, Nick, in the hot seat. And then I think, we could all be walking around and talking to people at the tables and helping to answer questions. That's what it looks like in my head, but I'm just throwing out my ideas.
I mean, that's similar to what we did for the construction stuff. And that's what we were planning on doing when we were talking about facilities in fall of '22. And people didn't remember, people kind of like, this is ridiculous, why don't I have the opportunity to have an open mic in front of 300 people? And eventually, we just said, fine, I'll go ahead and fire questions for 3 hours. And that's fine, I think people feel like, okay, well, I asked my questions, but it's not as productive as small groups giving us actual feedback on things that you guys can actually read and take. And so I just want to make sure that if we have another situation that comes up like we did 2 years ago, that the board's ready to
Well, from the look on Mr. Ballard's face out now, I think he wants Nick in the hot seat.
Yeah,
I think
well.
he'd enjoy that. And no, I think I agree that you know the good thing about what you did was if people say, oh well, I'm looking at these numbers and we could save $300,000 for cutting this one program. We need that next answer, like, okay, but if you cut this program, like we talked about earlier, we might have 100 students that go to a neighboring district because they have that program and they're going to continue to have that program. So then we save 300,000 and we lose 1.2 million or whatever. You know, that's that. So, and it's not being argumentative with the people, but it is, you know, we could limit it to 2.5 hours if you have
Yeah.
other plans. But, but I think that is a good way to do it. If we want to try and, you know, get the small table responses too, but they have to have that information to know that, hey, if I shout this out, I think it's a great idea. Well, there might be 10 reasons why it's not. You know, so.
Okay.
Yes,
I
Kate.
think, I mean, to continue off of that, I think it might be good for the groups to have maybe 3 common themes that they could still talk to you, Nick, and the board, and that we could respond. Because I know people feel like sometimes, gosh, they can ask us things in board meetings, we don't generally respond to citizens speaking. And I think it's important for them to be able to have that dialogue for the talk of any cuts or reductions or referendums. So, but I do understand maybe not every single person can have that dialogue back and forth, but if the groups had some, maybe 3 questions each or whatever it might be, that we could address those.
Okay.
And I wonder too if, you know, we could be walking around, you know, us board members and people from the admin, or, you know, we could each be at a table and be listening to the group as well. So we're taking in what they're saying and writing down questions that we can answer, or answering what we can. And so maybe that would feel more involved than if it's just groups without someone from the board or the administration with them. I don't know.
I can work with Tracy, we can put together a format, and we'll share it with you next Monday, as far as like kind of here's what we think the format would be, along with the other information we'll be sharing on Monday. Does that start at 6? And because I don't know if you want to go much later than that, because if it ends up being 2 or 3 hours, you know, it starts to, Rob, you have something?
Just as far as dinner time, if we're looking at inviting a number of our parents who do have school-age kids, and they're making dinner, and we're hoping that they prepare, and they're just getting off work at 5, 6:30 may be better, but I could be completely wrong.
Well, we can do 7. I mean, it's,
Well,
doesn't.
let's compromise, let's do 6:30, and then just say, and let's say that our goal is to be done by 8:30. So that way people spend less time spinning their wheels and, you know, complaining about the facts of life, and instead, you know, problem solve, because that's what we're going to hope that they do is, okay, if you don't want this cut to be made, then what other cuts would you put in its place? And each table comes up with its 3 questions. And if we say no repeats, by the time we get to the 12th table, we might not have that many questions. But, because if you recall, I mean, Nick was responding to some of the same comments that were made 25 times. And then finally, once he got to the 20th table, there was fewer people that felt like compelled to repeat what somebody else had already said.
Okay.
All right?
All right, well, that will be our direction. We'll have our other data ready for you guys on Monday as well. And I think that, you know, the thing that people have to understand is to do nothing is just not a good approach. I mean, it's just, you know, even going into next year, if you choose not to go to referendum, we are looking at $2.6 million deficit. Doesn't mean we have to eat it all. It means some of it could be budget cuts, some of it could be deficit spending, it could be a variety of things, but that'll be a different shift of the conversation based on what you guys decide to do by the end of January. And then we'll have a, you know, kind of a direction to go with that.
It's just that waiting until April of '26, it makes that referendum very high stakes if you wait until then.
Because
Because you've-
2026 will be at 4 point whatever million.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it's and it's, again, just want to reiterate for people that are tuning in, is this is not unique to us. I mean, there were more referendums this year than they've ever had. It's just ours happened to not pass. About 86% of them did pass. And so, the vast majority of school districts, over 80% of all the school districts in the state are using operating referendums to make ends meet right now as we're sitting. So this is not unique to our district. It's not unique to something that's been mismanaged or anything like that. This is a result of our funding not keeping up with inflationary increases.
I just have a quick question.
Yep.
So if we delay going to referendum until April of '26, then when, if it, say it passes, then when would it actually be implemented? The budget year of July 1st, or?
It'd
is
be,
it-
yeah, it'd be July 1st of
26.
26-27 school year, so it'd be FY '27. So it would be for that second year.
Okay, so we'd have next year, 25, 26, 2.6 million. And then the 26, 27, we actually wouldn't be at 4.4. We would.
Not if it passed.
Not
And
if it
if you
passed,
went
okay.
with 5 or, whatever it may be.
Okay. Just wanted to see how far behind we would be. Thank you.
If, to do nothing right now, the budget projections show us running about $20+ million worth of deficits over the next 5 years, if we just status quo it. So,
All right, any other questions on that? We've got a plan, and we'll talk, obviously, it'll be the big focal point of next week's work session.
Mr. President,
Yes,
just a request with regards to the agenda, if there's a chance, just given my time, if we could jump to district goals, if that's acceptable.
okay. Yeah, Nick, you have any problem with that?
No,
Because
no.
we've already talked about this months ago, and,
yeah, we talked about it a couple times, so, and Dave's not here to speak to his area, because I think that was the only area that we were kind of waiting on, because we're waiting on the percentiles, so I can speak to those. So what you'll see, sometimes when people will ask, well, gosh, the goal is only 67.8% proficient in reading. That seems like, we'd be okay with 30% of our kids not knowing how to read. That's not how it works. And percent proficient or proficiency and the ability to read and read at a reasonable level are not one and the same. You would think they would be, but they're not. And so when we look at that, we are currently at 64.8% in grades 3 through 11. To go, the goal would be to move it by 3 percentage points. And if we did that, we'd be in the 93rd percentile in the state. We'd be better than 93% of the school districts in the state. In math, again, trying to raise it by 3 percentage points would get us into the 91st percentile in the state. As you look at that. And so those were the things that the board was waiting on. What we said basically is if we went up by 6 percentage points in either one of those two categories, that put us into the 95th percentile, which has always been our long-range target. And so the thought was, when we talked to the board at the last work session, is that we would split that difference, try to get halfway there this year and get the rest of the way next year, because those are some pretty lofty goals. So it'd be the administration's recommendation to approve the 24-25 goals as presented, as you guys have seen a couple times now with the percentiles in there.
So moved.
Well,
yeah,
Go
we can motion a second,
Yep,
and then we
yep,
talk
yep,
about it.
yep.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion, a second, on the goals, and this is, again, just as reference, I don't know if you said it, Nick, but when we first looked at this as a board, was it 3 months ago? The recommendation was for a 2%
Yep.
goal.
Yep.
And I had asked the question, well, where would we be if it was 3%? That took a while to get that answer, but now we have it. So,
Yep.
Rob, with that, what do you have a question on?
yeah, just perhaps more of a request. So completely aligned with, we've had this conversation over the last few months. At our last meeting, we finally had the detail relating to the report card, and we're able to drill down into our elementaries, our middle school, our high school. We have 2 elementaries, Holton and Rivercrest, that are just knocking out of the park, and our other elementary schools are doing well. Our middle school in of itself is struggling. Our high school is doing better than our middle school. You know, I think our middle school takes away from the strong results that our children see at the elementary level and make it more challenging for our high school to basically catch up, just given where our middle school's at. And so I guess what I would ask for consideration, maybe make it a motion as a friendly amendment, is would there be, well, a district goal specifically for our middle school surrounding math as one goal, language arts being another goal, and increasing their specific results by 3%. In of itself, leaving all the other goals intact.
I mean, yeah, we can do that. I mean, we're gonna need to probably surpass that to get to this.
Or
just because-
5%.
You know what I mean? Because the elementaries, like you said, are doing as well as they are. And in our middle school this year went up about 11 to 12% respectively. I can't remember exactly what the number is, but I think there was double digits. So they've made gains.
But it's still not great.
It's not where we'd like it to be. And, I mean, so the buildings have their own building level goals that they're tied back to that feed into this. And the reason why we typically go 3 through 11 for a district, because it's a district-wide goal. But if the board wants to change it and add additional goals for both from both math and English for the middle school, then that would be something that I would have to come back. I'd have to talk to Dave and come back to you as far as what that looks like exactly.
Yeah, and I'd welcome a recommendation by you as far as what that goes, but ultimately, our middle school being lost in the fray of the overall district results, I think hinders our ability to get to where we want our children to be and takes away from where our elementary students are. So again, and I'll withdraw my friendly amendment, but I mean, ultimately, if there's an opportunity, if the board's willing to allow you that time to come up with a middle school language arts and math goal that you think is appropriate because it affects the entire district, I mean, I'd welcome that.
And there's nothing that says we can't have more specific goals that get attention, but I think your point is we
district
want
goal.
the district goal. Tonight is about setting district goals, not individual buildings. Yeah, Matt, Megan.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I totally get what you're saying, Rob. I worry about making middle school teachers feel like they're in the hot seat when they've had, really good progress this past year. So I don't want to look at the progress and say, you're still not doing good enough. I want to be like, keep going. How do we make our middle school staff and students feel like we're proud of the progress and it's not, and we want to see it keep going instead of make them, do you know what I'm saying? And I
do.
think the other thing, and you made a good point, is that kids are catching up again in high school. I think middle school, I mean, for me, it was like, it's a hard time in life, right? Like, that is some of the hardest times. Everything's changing. I mean, I didn't grow 4 inches in middle school, but a lot of kids grow a lot of inches. It's just like, it's very difficult, and I'm really excited about the new math program and curriculum and how that's really improving math. So I wonder if we just want to make sure we're drilling down more into it as a board versus make the goal stand out, like we're expecting more from you and you're not doing. Do you know what I mean?
I do, and I think if the goals are reasonable, we're not trying to cause people to leave. That's not the intent. But I think by the school board showing the importance of the middle school's success at math as well as language arts, I think that puts a whole different emphasis on that building in a positive way for teachers as well as the building leadership, because it's a district goals that the school board recognizes the importance of the middle school catching up. And we can certainly make it positive, but at the end of the day, it's imperative for us to make sure that middle school continues to grow, and that has direct visibility then to the board.
Lots
Mr.
of-
President,
yes.
I think too, making this more like an incentive of how can we all work together as a team to give the teachers that of math and English the tools that they need to be increasing our kids' capacity. So when, it's not like a hot seat, it's more of a spotlight, like, we really want to help you.
Yeah,
We
board-
want to partner together.
Board has ownership in this as well, because it's a district goal.
All right. Any further comments or questions? Otherwise, hearing none, then all those in favor of setting the district goals as proposed in this report, this most recent one, signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
All right, the ayes have it. We've set now the district goal at 3%, and we'll have further discussions about
Middle school goals.
middle school goals at another
I'll have
time.
Dave pull some stuff together, Rob, for the middle school stuff.
All right. So with that, I recognized that we missed a recognition. And was Sharv here?
I can still speak.
All right, let's have, please, because was Sharv here?
No, Sharp did
Okay.
not attend.
All right, we thought he was coming in. That's why we
Yeah.
didn't address it right away at 6 o'clock when we started.
Yeah, no, and that's certainly okay. But I just wanted to have an opportunity to just at least recognize Sharp Janney for his perfect 36 score on his ACT. Just a fabulous honor for Sharv. Many of you may remember that Sharv's 2 years ago, Sharv's older brother Shlok was here and recognized for the same honor. So quite the family to have two perfect ACT scores. I also wanted to share with the board a little bit about Sharv. Sharv really enjoys reading. He enjoys playing chess. Sharp science fiction movies are among kind of his go-to, and he also plays music. Or very much enjoys music. Plays in a number of our bands at the high school as well. I asked Sharv what he was going to pursue in terms of field of study, and like many of you, I'm sure physics was at the top of his list. And he's debating between quantum physics and astrophysics. So just good luck to Sharv. He's undecided on where he's going to attend school. Hasn't heard back from quite a few of the colleges that he's applied to, although he was direct admitted into Madison and feels real good about that. So I wish you were here tonight, but I just wanted to make a special shout out to Sharp Janney. Really proud of him for his perfect ACT score.
Yeah, well, that's saying something when your lowest rung on your ladder is the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Right?
And, yeah.
That's what I said.
But no, yeah, he's an amazing kid. He's been here plenty of times. I remember when he was quite a bit shorter than his older brother.
Yeah.
And he was, I think it was the spelling bee or the geography bee, probably both, that he was excelling at. So we're very proud of him and congratulate him. Something tells me it's not going to be our first opportunity to have him come to one of these board meetings.
I'm
So
quite confident he'll
we'll
be
remind
back.
him that he got that perfect score next time he
That's
comes.
right.
But anyway,
That's right. Great young man.
congratulations.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mike. Thanks. Yeah. So just quickly then, in our order, we had citizens request to speak about non-action items. We always have an opportunity for public comment. Is there any?
Nobody wants to speak tonight, right?
Okay. So looks like we have none. So now we are now up to UU property update from Derek.
Yeah,
So if
so I'll
someone could
invite the
come forward.
representatives. Yep, invite Jay and Ron, come on up and speak, just to kind of give a heads up or an update as to where everybody, where you're at with everything in the process, because I know some people are kind of curious.
Good evening. I'm Bill Derrick, one of the owners and president of Derrick Companies. We appreciate the opportunity to come here tonight, give you an update. I would tell you that the headwinds are probably stronger than we expected in a lot of ways. And that doesn't even include the rumblings I hear around my neighborhood on Crosby Drive about, oh, do you hear what they're going to do and all this? And, that's just, we all know that you have to put up with that. But we are working hard and have done a lot of things. And we've put a lot of money into and time into trying to make this work. bottom line is I'm sure the board is well aware of this, but the bottom line is, in order to develop it, we have to figure out a way to get it annexed into the Hudson, city of Hudson. And in order to get it annexed in, we have to figure out a way to get utilities to the land. And that is the bottom line. So it kind of comes down to Hudson has been very nonchalant about the whole thing. And I'm not saying they don't want it and they're not helpful. I'm just saying they could be more helpful than they've been. So in order to develop it, Hudson is requiring that it is annexed. But yet, we're running into roadblocks getting it annexed. So they won't let us develop it unless it's annexed. It doesn't make sense anyway, but so that's kind of where we're at. I just want to let you know that it's our intention to be able to execute the contract that we've signed. I'm also going to tell you it's far from certain that we'll be able to, and which is hard for us because we like that piece of land, and we think Hudson needs that some additional development. There's a lot of positives about it. It's just that right now it's very difficult for us to do this. That being said, you know, we started with Plan A, went to Plan B, went to Plan C, went to the hybrid of B and C and all this. We're still working on it. And we wouldn't have been, if we weren't serious, we wouldn't have spent the money to do a wetland delineation. We wouldn't have hired engineers to do a preliminary layout for us. We have more than just Jay working on knocking on some doors and trying to figure out how we can make this work. So that's just kind of an overview. We go back, every week we go back and forth. You know, one week it's like there's no way. Next week, well, maybe, you know. So it's been very difficult for us. It certainly hasn't been as easy as some other developments we have done. So with that, I want to turn it over to Jay and let him just go through some of the details so you know exactly a little bit more what we're trying to do, if that'd be okay. Okay?
Jay Fletch. I'll be somewhat brief, but there's really 4 points to look at. The first point comes down to Derek's commitment to the piece. They're just as committed to getting this done as the day they signed the contract. And that's evident in the expenses and the time and whatnot that put out there. The second point to note is the city of Hudson and working with them. It's Hudson's, I'm trying to think of the word, preference. It's their preference that anytime you're looking at annexing something, that they have unanimous property owners say yes. There's really 3 routes to get this done. I'm probably giving you more details than you want, but as Bill said, Plan A, B, C, and then the hybrid, we've essentially, I mean, it's spot on what they are. There's 2 routes that are basically dead. And the reason why those 2 routes are dead is because we cannot get unanimous yeses along both those routes. So it leaves our 3rd route. And our 3rd route, I'm a sports guy. It's Monday Night Football. I want to say there is a Hail Mary, a long shot that is going to make that route possible, but it does come with some significant increases in the inputs for the derricks to get it done. But that is really the plan that we're most aggressive on right now, is that route there. So that's those 3 routes. And then the last point I was going to make is, where do we go from here? I've worked with the Derricks now. I mean, I grew up with their nephews. I've worked with them for a long time. One of the things I admire about them is they're very transparent. And so transparency in this is, in order to make this happen, we got to get one of these routes to work. So we have a plus or minus, and I don't have the exact date, but we have plus or minus 60 days left of the due diligence. And really, we'll be spending all that time trying to get this third route to work. That's kind of in a nutshell, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that doesn't exceed what I can share or not share, right? So.
Yes. Bob?
I'd like to, Bill, and I'd like to apologize for, I know this is not an easy push in this community.
Well, we feel for you just as much.
I know
because we
that-
want to get it done.
Well, it seems like, from what I'm hearing, you guys are kind of taking the heat for all development in the township of Hudson. You probably are being blamed for the solar farm. I don't know. But I know that people have said, well, if that property is annexed, then the township could lose up to 400 acres or what have you. I know you're receiving some pressure. The township is saying, I'm assuming that they're saying, you can do this without annexing and trying to make it work. I agree, I don't see how that could happen. So I'm just a vote of support. I don't want you to lose your investment and would love to see good company, good reputation. Just words of encouragement.
I appreciate it.
I would say that, in fact, my brother Ron and I have talked on this a couple of times, and I think we both believe that if this particular land was trying to be annexed in to a different community in St. Croix County, a couple of different municipalities that we've worked with, it would get done. It's just, Hudson's just, I think Hudson's has that attitude, and I can't speak for them obviously, but I feel their attitude is, it'll happen when it happens. And eventually it'll happen, or something, and I'm just like, sometimes to get these things done, you gotta push, you gotta, take a few risks, but.
Meanwhile, River Falls is saying, watch what we're going to make happen.
Well, and
I didn't say River Falls.
and that's a really good point, because one of the things is I feel Hudson watched what happened in River Falls, and the fear the township retaliating if they were to take the approach River Falls would take. And I understand that. I mean, nobody wants to get into, the everyday of that part of it.
We were told, Hudson came right out and said, we don't want to go to court.
Right.
They just flat out said, this sounds good, but we know we're gonna have to go to court, and we don't want to go to court. And so we're trying to work around that.
Mr. President?
Molly?
Thank you. I just want to say, first of all, thank you so much for taking this on, and I'm sorry that's been so incredibly stressful. I hope you know that I personally, and I think the board is committed that this should happen. Development around our area, we cannot go west. North is North Hudson. South you could go south. And this is what we need for our community. We need housing for people. I really feel very strongly, that we as board members and elected officials are put into that position to make a hard decision. And knowing that we've been through a lot here and had people be very angry with us, and it is not fun. It's not fun. I'm sure many people on here have had sleepless nights because they're worried about things. But we need to do what's right for our community. And I think, how lucky could we be to have a local builder want to build on this property? And I myself have a derrick home in North Hudson, which I have lived in for 22 years, and it is fantastic. And it is a wonderful company who, when we had, like the years up, they came and they fixed things that we were like, hey, what about this? With a very few things. Very reliable, great company, and I don't know why this isn't a no-brainer. So, thank you.
We would say the same thing. I mean,
Exactly.
way back when we heard rumors about the school district putting this up for sale, I was like, and, like I said, my backyard backs up to this, but It was like, and I remember a former board member at the time, I was talking to her, and she says, well, yeah, but you gotta get it annexed in. And I regret what I said next. I said, we can take care of it. We can do that. What, you know, we can
Well, that's
get
just
it
having
done.
a
This isn't
positive
the
attitude,
first-
that's all.
Yeah, this isn't the first, you know, isn't our first rodeo, but this has been difficult.
Well, hopefully, you know, you haven't completely hit a brick wall, and as I've been hearing for years, ever since the Atwood property got developed, and Quick Trip is there, the apartment building is there. The bank was the very first thing on the corner there. And once that was developed, the city was lamenting the fact they had nowhere to go. There's no place for, you know, either commercial or residential development. And then what happens to the price of homes then when you run out of land for that? They skyrocket. And they can do something about it by, you know, and solve their problem of having no place to go for folks. So hopefully, the process will work and just takes a little bit more time. If that happens, I guess let's see what happens in 60 days.
So I do, I do a fair amount of public speaking, and one of the things that I always say is, if you're gonna survive, if you're gonna get through hardships and that, quitting's not an option. And a lot of people in life, you hear all the time, well, I tried it and I failed. I tried, but I failed. I always say that, did they really fail, or did they just quit when they came up against the hurdles of
Right.
life or business or whatever it is? And sometimes we just have to figure a way to get around it, over it, or whatever, because success is hopefully not far away. This is going to get developed sometime. The problem is trying to convince all the parties we need to get on the same page with us that now's the time to do it. And that's what we're trying to do.
I think part of it is the obstacles that people had in their minds from 20 years ago.
Yep.
You know, whether it's water treatment or, you know, extending utilities and stuff like that. But their mindset is still back there, but the technology is there to make it work, so. Any other comments? All right, thanks a lot for coming.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate
Thanks,
it.
guys.
Thanks for your work.
Yep.
All right, so we're on reports, and we did the construction update. School board election, Nick?
Yep, just election update. On our district webpage, you can see we have when papers are due. So if anybody's wanting to run for the school board, January 7th, Tuesday, January 7th, 5 p.m., all papers are due. We do have 3 seats that are up for election. And of the 3 incumbents so far, we've had a notice of non-candidacy from 1 incumbent. That would be Mr. Johnson here to my left, who will
Yep.
be running for judge. And so he's not running for school board. But that paperwork for notice of non-candidacy, I believe, is due December 27th, Tim, is that right? December 27th. And so about 10 days before, 11 days before the paperwork for notice of candidacy is due. So just reminding people, those are the dates coming up, and the election is on April 1st, 2025.
Kate, you have a question?
I do. A lot of people have asked me about that 3rd seat and how that works.
Yep.
So maybe you could explain that. For people, it is a little confusing.
Yep, absolutely. So since there was an appointment that was done last year for Director Logan's seat was appointed, and we had Lynn Robson appointed. The way that works is the 3rd seat then for this coming election, whoever is the 3rd highest vote getter, then would have to rerun again in 1 year. So it's not so we don't have director districts or anything like that. Everything's at large in our district. So it's the 3rd highest vote getter that would then run again to put us back into our normal election cycles when that seat would typically be up for election.
So there will be 3 spots in 25 and 3 spots in 26, regardless of what happens.
Correct. Yep.
All right. Now, this is the report that I was waiting for, and they've been waiting here for an hour. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah.
It is the time for us to get the mental health and prevention update.
Yeah, thank
So-
you both for your patience. Tonight, we have Sally Pierno, our prevention specialist, and Kristen Ziebel, who is our mental health coordinator and a counselor at Holton Elementary.
Good evening. First of all, okay, there we go, it was on. First of all, I just want to say thank you for having us here. What you see up there is the vision of our mental health team, how we have come together and what our goals are. I think the important thing there is that we're always looking to create systematic change. We're always wanting all students, staff, everybody to feel welcome. If we can go to the next slide, Tim. So our focus is these 4 pillars: resiliency, connection, community, and support. So our resiliency is our capacity to withstand and recover from a challenge. Our support is how do we provide and empower our students, our staff. Connection, that relationship or association, how do they feel connected in their schools? And of course, our community is what can we do to foster and work with our communities so that we all work together to promote our students' mental health.
Our work is informed by a number of data points, one of them being the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and this is the national survey taken every 2 years in spring of odd years, so we will be taking it again this spring. And this is important data, and I want to be clear about that. I also want to share that the data comes to us very slowly from this, so it is one point that we look at when we are making our programming goals and that sort of thing. We took the YRBS in spring of '23, grades 7 through 12 did it. Lest anyone be concerned that it's not actually confidential, it is so confidential that we do not yet have middle school results from 2023. That is still pending through DPI, just to make that clear. So there's been a number of turnovers at the Department of Public Instruction when it comes to the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and I've emailed again this month, not yet received middle school results. But like I said, one data point of many. We also have, we are all professionals in this realm. We use SABRS, which is our universal screener that kind of looks at a number of measures, including like academic readiness to learn in the classroom, and it's a really quick, brief thing. Behavioral data from all of our schools and anecdotal data. When it comes to the YRBS, however, one measure we are looking at is school connection. This is important to us because we know there's a mental health crisis among teens in the United States, and it's not something that we can solely address. But what we can address is the way our students feel when they walk into our buildings. Our goal was to increase connectedness by 3%. Luckily, we exceeded that. So from 2021 to 2023, our school connection measure went up 4%, and we are very proud of that. There's obviously a lot of things that our staff do day in and day out that impacts connectedness. Some of them are listed there. So WEB is Where Everybody Belongs. That's our middle school orientation program. It's not just a one and done at the beginning of the school year, but partners 8th grade leaders with 6th graders throughout that first 6th grade year. BAR is Building Assets and Reducing Risk, and that's for our ninth grade academy. Mentorship programs at several elementary schools. Do you know how many elementaries have a formal mentorship program?
I don't.
Okay, well, we have mentorship programs and they are wonderful. Check-in, check-out is a tier 2 or tier 3 intervention that we use with targeted students, assigning a staff member who is really intentionally meeting with that kid and making sure that they they've got someone in their corner at school. Relationship mapping is a process we do at many of our schools. The middle school just completed relationship mapping, as well as the high school for this fall, identifying staff members that have a connection with students and then targeting students that don't seem to have an adult that they know well. SABRS, like I mentioned, is that universal screener. Raider Rockstar, trying to really recognize the phenomenal staff we do have in our buildings so that they also feel that recognition and support. And then therapy dogs, which we now have in several buildings. They come once a week for 2 hours. Started in the middle school last year, phenomenal response. We have Penny at the high school.
We have Eddie at Holton, and that's where we're at, I think.
Ember at Rivercrest.
I couldn't remember the name of the one at Rivercrest.
It's a partnership through a nonprofit called You're Not Alone, where they strategically partner with school districts to bring these therapy dogs in. Gives a nice moment of kind of relaxation for students or can be really a great way for students to regulate.
So that connection data, that point that we just talked about was actually when in 2018, 2019, we applied for the first grant and got it. And that was actually one of our points, is to bring up that connection. So we feel like that's a great thing to get started with. As we can see, these numbers don't feel good, right? When we see these are kids behind these numbers. And it is hard to see. I think that all of us know that that's really tricky. You had some additional data you wanted to share on that?
Yeah, so we know these numbers are difficult, and they have not shifted much since 2019. Like, we all know this is a community-wide issue and effort, and so there's only so much we can do within the buildings, but we do want to point these out, say it's not shifted much since 2019. It's also very closely aligned to statewide data. We're not an anomaly by any means. But just to put a little bit more kind of humanity behind these numbers, as of Friday, 17 of our students that we are aware of have been hospitalized or in treatment for mental health just this school year. And those are only the kids that we know. We know that there have also been presentations to the ER with self-harm and suicidality, and those are not always things we know about. We sometimes hear midway through the day, by the way, so-and-so presented to the ER last night and was not doing well. So we are working very hard to partner with these students and their families, because again, it's got to be a whole team solution when we're trying to find the best ways to keep these kids in school, keep them connected, and keep their education moving forward.
Awesome. So as we can see, Hudson students receive help when they need. We are in a positive trend where they're feeling like we are there for them, someone's there for them. They can get the help they need at school with mental health or things that we do. And the next slide kind of shows that it's not that way across Wisconsin statewide. They're kind of on a downward trend, whereas we're on an upward trend that kids feel like they're getting what they need. Can we always do more? You bet. Will we always do more? You bet. But it's a positive trend for us that our work since 2018 is starting to show up in the data. So our plans to continue to move that needle of students feeling like they're supported is working continually as the mental health coordinator, trying to get more MOUs or memorandum of understanding with more therapy places that can come into our buildings for our families and students with barriers that can't get to outside therapy. That sounds like an easier thing than it is. It's really, really hard, but I'm currently working on another one. So right now, we have 2 agencies that come into our 8 buildings. They're kind of divided between, and we're looking to add a 3rd. So hopefully going to add some more things. We do have some that, the trickiness is trying to find somebody who can come and be here for a day. Right now, we know students and families are waiting a really long time to be seen on the outside, so the more we can have it in our buildings, it makes it better, because instead of a student being gone for 2 hours to go to an appointment, they can go down, do their 30-minute to 45-minute appointment, and go right back to class. We did a Youth Frontiers Parent Academy in October, trying to promote that conversation of it's the schools and the families and the community working together. We did a library district book study on the book Anxious Generation. We had 2 pretty well attended, I think, for the library. We didn't know what to expect when we partnered. Great conversations, great things of seeing what the community's seeing with the connection of devices and students' mental health. I have spent today really working on the Screenagers documentary. You're going to see a save the date coming out really shortly. January 30th, we're hoping to have the elementary movie. We're going to do it kindergarten through 7th grade, because the person in the movie is about 7th grade. It will be offered to parents to come with their child and watch this about screens. We are hoping to do that with, we're going to partner with some and have a dinner and resource table, followed by the screening of the movie, followed by a panel. The next hope is that in the spring, we're just You guys were talking about finding space. That's what I've been doing today. I'm hoping to have one in middle school and high school one of Screenagers, the New Digital Age, which talks about screens and our students' mental health. And then Mental Health Week.
The high school, I believe last year was the second mental health week or third that they've had at the high school, which has been a great opportunity for student groups to kind of stand up and take some ownership and leadership and leading different activities throughout the week focused on mindfulness regulation, things like that, and just celebrating some fun things you can do at school. And I've got some grand plans to roll that down this year to middle and elementary school, and did talk to the library about what they could do to highlight some titles and things like that that might be of interest. But I think that this is a growth opportunity to really make Mental Health Week a Hudson thing and not just a Hudson School District thing.
Yes, love that. Continue to add opportunities for our teachers. Last year, we used some of our dollars to purchase mental health books for teachers to be able to check out during the summer and read and learn about. That was well received. So I'm currently working on with our team is bringing also digital, Mac and Via, digital staff books for our staff in ebooks and audiobooks with the same mental health titles. And our staff also suggested 10 more titles that we have now purchased those books as well.
This year is a first year of having DARE, drug education, at all of our elementary schools. We did a pilot last year at Hudson Prairie. It went really well. I have to give a shout out to Officer Tracy Hall, who's just doing a phenomenal job at leading the DARE education. We have our first graduation at Hudson Prairie this Friday. I got to read 4 of the student essays talking about what they learned, and it was just phenomenal. DARE has come a long way since the 90s, and it is much more about a decision-making model, peer pressure, both positive and negative, consequences, both positive and negative, in evaluating decision-making. So the essays highlighted that the students are really learning that, and we're very proud and excited about that. We also are continuing, we use MindWise Signs of Suicide, which is an evidence-based curriculum to meet our statutory requirement to teach suicide prevention. Those lessons begin in 7th grade and go 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. And then we also continue suicide prevention through our teen mental health first aid curriculum that all 10th graders receive in high school health class. And then one other big thing we want to highlight is that we started a new partnership this year with the JED Foundation. The JED Foundation is specifically focused on suicide prevention and began on college campuses. They adapted an Air Force base model in order to bring these big ideas to large systems, and so we are pretty excited about that. We have a steering committee at the high school of 9 staff members, both certified staff and non-certified staff, who were interested in it. And it's a real cross-section of the building. We had about 25 members that were interested in joining, so the staff are on board, are excited, and we've been continuing. We just had a meeting this afternoon. So that will be a 3-year process just to make sure that we all feel really solid in our suicide prevention efforts.
So the funding, as you heard me mention, in 2018, it was a competitive grant that Hudson went for, and then it was on a 2-year biennial that we would apply for the grant and then receive the grant. That has now changed to where it is, school districts are just given an amount per student. Currently, it's $31 per student. They're talking about changing that. We're working with DPI. It's a really, really slow process to get anything from DPI. We're halfway through the year and we don't know what our allotment is for this year. But we know that it's approximately $31. And we're hoping to expand some of those parameters so we have a little bit more ability to get the needs of the students met.
Yeah, and so funding for all of these things is largely from these restricted dollars that can't be spent on other things. We also received the AODA grant, which is $25,000 per year on a 2-year renewal cycle, so I'll be applying for that again. We just applied for an opioid prevention grant funds. We'll hear about that in mid-January, but the bulk of our work comes from those dollars. I wanted to be clear about that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all we've got, so if you have any questions.
Mr.
Yes,
President.
Kate.
So, first of all, I'm a proud DARE graduate. It was kind of a highlight of elementary school. So I think that's really fun that it's back, and even better. So I have 2 questions. One is, when we do the suicide awareness and lessons with the kids, are we letting parents know ahead of time so they can then discuss it later with their kids?
Yes, so, great question. In seventh and eighth grade, or I'm sorry, in seventh grade, it is a special lesson where a counselor comes in, and they've done it in the family and consumer science class, just because they're breaking into specials for different lessons throughout the year. You know, there's the lesson on mean versus rude versus bullying, that kind of thing. And so a notice is sent home with families in advance. And we break into different classes. In eighth grade, it's in health during their lesson that does focus on mental health, so it's part of the broader unit that does also address suicide. So there is notice sent home at that time.
Okay, wonderful. And this isn't to put you on the spot, but I'm curious if you could just walk us through, maybe a student comes to a teacher and says, I feel like I'm having suicidal thoughts, or I need to reach out for help. What is the process, and how do we work through that with the student from beginning
Sure.
to end, so to speak, or?
So there's a couple things that happen. So if it's a teacher, the typical response is that the teacher will partner with the student to get down to the student services office and start speaking with a counselor. We do a lot of training with teachers on that as well. There's a model notice on suicide prevention we all go over with them every year. And once that warm handoff is made to student services, the counselor kind of steps in. An administrator is always made aware, and a phone call home is always made. We have a risk response form that is uniform. We just spent a ton of time last year working on that. So it's the same for all elementary students, and it's the same for 6 through 12. It's not the same K-12 because it's a different developmentally appropriate thing. What we do is ask many questions of the student. We are never assigning a risk level. We are not saying, I believe you. We never say to a parent, your child said this, I don't think they really meant it. We are just gathering information on current supports, past attempts, information like that, so that when we have it all documented in front of us, we can call the parent. Typically with the student, we'd like them to be there side by side. Sometimes they're not in a state where they can be. And give all that information to the parent, and then it's up to the family to kind of take the next steps as to whether student is picked up right away, you know, are they brought into a therapy appointment? Are they asked to remain in school and see at the end of the day? But it's always taken seriously, I will say that. You know, sometimes there are students who will flippantly make a comment that is not a true intent, and that's okay, we follow the same steps. And then that's a learning conversation about you were frustrated, and what are some other ways you can express that? Because this is something that we take very seriously in our district. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Is there follow-up with that student after? the
Typically,
fact?
yes. I mean, yes, no, there always is. I'm sorry, that was not. The second half of that conversation is focusing on what they can do the next time. So we try and ask students to identify adults in the building that they feel that they can go to when they are struggling, adults in the community, like if you're at home and mom and dad aren't there, who can you call? What is it that you can do? And coping strategies, mindfulness, like journaling, coloring, things like that that can help try and regulate a student in the moment. And when we do have students out of our building for mental health reasons, when we are aware of it, like I said, sometimes students will present to an ER and they're back home and back in school the next day before we know. When it's an extended absence, we have a reentry meeting with a supportive team. So typically counselor, parents, an administrator, a teacher if they're available, and social worker to go through what supports we need to know about for the students, what should we be putting in place, and trying to make that reentry as smooth as possible.
I would add to that with, you know, like the younger students, which I do. We do a lot of, like you just said, replacement behaviors, replacement language, right? I'm mad at you, I'm going to say I want to kill you, or I'm mad at this, I'm going to kill myself. Doing the replacement language so they know that those are scary words, right? What could we say instead? So we do a lot of practicing, a lot of writing, a lot of role-playing, those types of things, so they don't just impulsively say words that are scary.
Well, your work is really valuable, and we appreciate it. Is there any tools that we can be helping with?
We would love for you to promote the Screenagers event on January
Yes.
30th.
Okay.
I will say, I think, you know, it's been really great. The library partnership was wonderful, and it wasn't strictly, if you have a child in this district, we'd like you to participate in this. The other piece of it was that just, I think having that cross-promotion, you know, the library purchased 25 additional copies of the book, The Anxious Generation, and they were all checked out. So we feel passionate.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably clear. And so anytime that we can help you, have you guys, you know, continuing those conversations, bringing things to us, if you hear a need in the community that we're not addressing.
I think it's helping us get people to the events. These are great events. Just like I was listening to you talk about trying to get people to come and talk about the referendum, it's the same type of thing. Our Screenager event will have a registration this time because we, you know, if we're gonna get food, if we're gonna do these things. So promote it. We are gonna make the Screenager community-wide, not just parents and students, like anybody can come.
Date, time, and location again?
They'll all be coming out in the next week. We're still hammering out the details, but January 30th is the date that we're working on. I'm pretty sure it's going to be 5:30 to 7:30. 5:30 to 6 will be dinner and resource tables, and 6 to 7:30 will be the screening and a panel with questions answered.
And so we definitely want to be reserving on our calendars the evening of January 30th.
January 30th, and I'm working on the middle school, high school date.
It'll be later this spring.
It'll be later this spring. I've got a date in mind. We had to do some shifting because of the spring play, but I'm working on it. I'm hoping to send a save the date before Christmas break or winter break.
But that is the last Thursday
Yes,
in January.
that's the elementary one, yes.
Okay, great.
Mr. President?
Yes, Molly?
I just had a quick question about, to go back to how you were kind of personalizing that 17 kids were in mental health treatment this year. What happens, do kids who are in mental health treatment, do they leave the Hudson School District? Like, are they disenrolled and then enrolled in another, or are they able to keep up with their homework here? And how is that handled?
That's a great question. And it depends on the facility that they go to. So it's a patchwork that we have been working through a lot this year to kind of determine. They remain our students at different, so like there's partial hospitalization, there's residential, there's all these different tiers, right? And typically they'll have some hours of education. Now, at the high school level, a lot of students are able to keep up with their core classes through Google Classroom if they have access to technology while they're at treatment. That can vary. Sometimes students will receive educational services through their treatment facility, and that may be provided by another district. I mean, to be totally frank, 99% of our students who are receiving treatment in Minnesota. That's just where the services are. And so sometimes we will get a tuition agreement from them. And then there's also a calculation where for X number of hours in treatment, you can get it's like a 0.5 of an elective credit, because that is counted as work that you are doing on yourself in education. So it is extremely personalized to each student, which is why those reentry meetings are so critical. We don't always know before students enter, you know, treatment's not like we're a part of that planning with the family on that end. So it's just about having releases of information so that we can figure out what work has been done, where the gaps are, and how we catch them back up.
So are you the point person, like at the high
No.
school? Or is it the counseling staff? Or
It's a partnership between their school counselor and Julie Johnson, school social worker at the high school. Her role is now full-time, and so she is taking on a lot of that work when it comes to the reentries, but this is kind of our first semester doing that work, I'd say. Yeah, and it just varies depending on what facility they're in.
Okay, just curious about that. And years ago, I had sent you a note about Hudson Safe. Just if you need support or anything like that, I'm sure that the board would be interested in providing support for your endeavors. And good job, both of you.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate it.
Do you have a contact for them? Because I was just working on them today. So send that
Yeah,
to
I
me.
can just
For the resource
reach out to
tables.
me. Yes,
Yes.
reach out to me and I can connect you
Okay.
with people.
Awesome,
Yeah,
thank
for
you.
sure.
Mr.
Megan.
President, thank you both so much for all that you do, and to all our counseling and social work staff in our schools. It's heartbreaking to see the numbers of our kids who are struggling, and to know, you know, that's happening across our state, across our country. And we had a big conversation about funding challenges earlier, and I know you all face funding challenges, but is kind of a big question, but, you know, if money wasn't an option, which we notice, what are the things that you wish you could be doing that you don't have funding for? Are there things?
I don't know that it's a lack of funding sometimes.
Time.
Connection, to be able to make those connections for our students. I know as an elementary counselor, not a lot of therapists want to work with our little kids. And it's like, I need support for those kids. So that is how this latest MOU came about. I just reached out and I said, why is everybody afraid of the little ones? They're the best. Of course, I'm biased. And that started a new partnership. So I think it's just always trying to work together and getting people at our events. Those are our big things. I can't think of anything else. You got something?
No, I think I've been digging in more to the issue that Molly was talking about this year as far as supporting our students while they're away and for them to transition back. And I mean, that could be a full-time position, just making those outreaches to families, to facilities and things like that. We are in kind of a desert for support services in this area unless you can cross the river and get to Minnesota. So that's always a struggle.
Yes.
Any other comments or questions? I just want to echo the comments made by the other board members and excellent points that Kate brought out earlier. I just can't emphasize strongly enough how important your work is and how grateful we are that we have very competent people leading this. We hear oftentimes from those who are not close to the situation, and they want to say things like, we need to go back to the basics. We need to stick with just reading and writing, and let's not put any money into mental health and so forth. It's just ostriches sticking our heads in the sand would be my analogy of what that kind of attitude is. And the people that have the memories of the Leave It to Beaver days in the 50s and stuff like that, that's not what our teenagers are facing anymore. And there's all kinds of reasons. And, you know, I remember the heartache of what our district went through when we had, you know, multiple suicides. We had multiple heroin overdoses going on. And I don't want to revisit those days again. I want to continue to do better for our kids. And the school district gets blamed for a lot of stuff. It's tough, though. Parents they have limited time as well. We talk about time being a resource. And just having those capabilities, knowing how to handle the situation, it's tougher for parents these days. And we're not going back to the days where one spouse is able to stay at home and so forth and handle all of these problems themselves. People need training. That's why all the work you do is really important on the parental and family education and being able to deal with this as a team, because it does take a team to deal with this. So any other comments? Thank you again for your report.
Thank you very much.
All right. With that, we're left with topics for possible action. We just left with consent agenda. So if somebody would make the motion with the expenditures.
I move approval of the consent items and that the Chief Financial and Operations Officer be authorized to pay bills in the amount of $2,510,138.07.
We have a motion by Molly, second by Bob. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and we have some announcements. It's that time of year, right, Andrea?
Do, yes.
I didn't forget.
You did not forget, and because of the timing with the deadline for retirement notification being December 15th, we're probably going to have some more in January as well, but we have some biggies at this meeting. First up is Kevin Kanoki. He's fifth grade teacher, currently at Hudson Prairie, 26 years of service in the district. Then we have Tammy Shulo. She's a special ed para at the middle school, 27 years of service as a special ed para. Paula Feierheisen, a fourth grade teacher at North Hudson with 33 years of service in the district. Steve Ewells, the head custodian at the middle school, 28 years of service. And his retirement is a little earlier than the others because he's on a different cycle. Jen Johnson, who's a first grade teacher at Hudson Prairie, has 35 years of service to the district. And last but not least is Lori Rosini, a school counselor at the high school, and she has 27 years of service. So a bunch more retirees that we're going to be able to celebrate at the upcoming recognition banquet, which is May 7th, Wednesday, May 7th. So just want you guys to have that date off right now. And again, we'll be probably adding a few more next month.
For any of us that won't be on the board on May 7th, can I still get invited to that?
I bet you could, yes.
It is one of my most favorite events that we have as board members, is to be able to give that recognition. So, well, that leads us then to the closed session motion. There's actually two grounds for going into closed session, and I just want to state to the public that we will not be reconvening in open session, but we'll adjourn the meeting from closed session. With that, is there a motion? We have fewer people, so
I know,
don't
it
everyone
just
jump at
falls on
once.
so few of us. I move that we convene in closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent D, to consider strategies for crime detection and prevention, and pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85, parent 1, parent G, to confer with legal counsel concerning strategy to be adopted by the board with respect to litigation in which it is involved.
Okay, this requires a roll call vote. We'll see how close this one.
Second.
Well, we have a second from Megan. Thank you. Bauman.
Aye.
Garza.
Aye.
Powers.
Aye.
Rozowski.
Aye.
And Johnson says aye, so the ayes have it. We will convene in closed session. We'll go upstairs for that. Short recess to get upstairs, and then we'll adjourn from there. Thank you.